In this lesson, let's talk about making that money. This is probably what you came here for. Let's talk about profitability. By the end of this lesson, you guys will have a great understanding about how to estimate the profitability of an item, both in the short term and the long term. In this particular lesson, we're going to concentrate on an individual product profitability as opposed to the profitability at a company level. Profitability analysis, I know, can be kind of tough for some people. We need to get the best estimate we can and make sure that there's enough of a buffer that we will still make a profit if we run into unexpected costs. It's always going to be an estimate to some extent because certain variables we won't know exactly, like the amount of PPC or promos that you'll need to do. We're going to look for items that sell for at least $15, which leaves enough room after the Amazon fees to make a profit. This module is focused on the product research phase, so we're going to concentrate on the product itself and its profitability. We're working towards a long-term revenue stream, and if we include setup costs like photography, graphic design, or launch giveaways, at this stage, it may skew our view. We will, of course, need funds for those items as well, but those are one-time costs and can be factored into the overall product or overall company budget later. PPC will be included here because you'll never want to stop doing PPC. That's a question I oftentimes get is, when do you stop PPC? And me personally, I never. I continue to do Amazon sponsored products or PPC for the life of my particular products. Let's start by talking about landed costs. This is a term that you'll commonly hear inside of the e-commerce sphere. These costs will be here every time you sell a product, and they're made up of 4 different areas. The first area is the cost of goods. This is what you're going to pay your supplier per unit to produce your particular product. Next, we have our prep or our inspection fees. And these are any fees related to preparing your product or paying an inspection company to do an inspection on your product. Third, we have shipping. This is the cost of getting your finished goods from the factory into Amazon. This can vary depending on the type of shipping method that you choose to use. However, we're going to want to make sure that we factor this into our landed costs. Lastly, we have duties. This is the cost that you pay to the government to import goods for resale into the country. You can search your product's HTS code and duty rates online, or an easier way to figure out the duties is to just ask your freight forwarder. The rate at which your particular product is taxed with duties depends on where you're ordering your goods from and where they're being shipped to. In addition, these rates often change over time as different countries have different rules about importing and exporting from those respective countries. So these are the 4 items that are going to make up your landed costs. Again, that's cost of goods, the prep or inspection fees, the shipping, as well as your duties. Now that you understand your landed costs, let's talk about Amazon fees. This is what you're going to pay to Amazon. Their fees come in many different forms. Some are based on the price of the sale. Others are based on whether or not you choose FBM or FBA. And some are based on the size or weight of the particular product. That being said, let's try to simplify this a little bit. There's essentially 2 types of Amazon fees. One is the referral fee, and this is essentially what Amazon charges you for acquiring your customer for you and selling your product on their platform. This is usually 15%. It can be a little bit different in a few different categories. I actually think this is a pretty darn good deal because if you're familiar with e-commerce or the price to acquire a customer, for most e-commerce sellers, it's quite a bit more than 15% of your sales. So even though you hear a lot of Amazon sellers complain about this, 15% is actually a pretty darn good deal to acquire a customer and sell them a product. The second major type of Amazon fees is going to be their fulfillment fees, assuming you're using FBA, which I strongly recommend. The FBA fulfillment fees depend on the weight and the dimensions of your particular product, what marketplace you're selling in, but this is essentially what they're charging you in order to store your goods, pick, pack, and ship them to the customer. Those are going to be the main 2 fees. There's some other ones like long-term storage fees or return and disposal fees or a monthly Seller Central account fee. However, in the big scheme of things, the ones that I mentioned in those latter categories make up a pretty small percentage. So for budgeting purposes, let's be thinking about the two big ones, which is the referral fee, about 15%, and the FBA fulfillment fee. We've put together a great spreadsheet to help you with this, and it also includes setup costs like photography and promotions, and you can find it at junglescout.com/FBA-calculator. Now we know that we're looking for something that we can sell for at least 15 bucks, and that we're gonna need to account for these different fees like the Amazon referral fee, as well as the fulfillment fees. Now let's talk about the difference between ROI versus margin. Now, if you're an accountant and you're watching this, you already know all this stuff, and you know that some of these areas can get a little bit complex if you're talking about net versus gross or whatever else, but we're gonna try to simplify this a little bit. Your margin equals your profit divided by revenue. And this is measuring your profit in relation to the sales price or the revenue you generate from it. Your ROI, which is your return on investment, is your profit divided by costs. And this is going to be your return on investment, and it's measuring your profit in relationship to your costs. Personally, I like to go by ROI because this lets me know how much return I'm getting on my investment. If I'm getting a poor return on the investment that I'm making into Amazon and my Amazon business, then I'd probably rather go for some other type of business or invest my money elsewhere. If you're deciding between two different products and all else is equal, including the margin, you would want to choose whichever one has a higher ROI since it's making you more money based off the amount of money that you're putting in. The margin itself can never exceed 100%, and a typical margin for Amazon sellers is about 25%. There's some people that run their businesses really lean and can do a little bit better than that. Let's say 40 or maybe 50% margin, but that's getting on the very high end. Something like a 25% margin is going to be much more realistic. Your ROI can exceed 100% because if you can imagine that if you put in $1 and get out $2.50, that means you made $1.50 for putting in $1 or 150% return on investment. We of course want you to make as much profit as possible. So 100% ROI or making $1 profit for every dollar you put in is going to be our baseline goal for this academy. There are of course a lot of products that make a higher ROI or a lower ROI, but for the Academy's purpose, we'll try to find a product that gets us as close to 100% ROI or better. Once we narrow down our selection to just a few items, we'll dive deeper into the profit analytics section. Right now, just keep this in mind. Do you think you could source and ship this product into Amazon for significantly less than what it's selling for? That's ultimately the goal here. No need to go crazy with entering everything into spreadsheets yet. Just think about this. You'll get better at spotting these good opportunities and estimating costs as you go. You can spot check prices on Alibaba, but take them with a grain of salt. They tend to not really be that accurate. And a good rule of thumb is the rule of threes. Roughly 1/3 is going to go to fees. Roughly 1/3 is going to go to your landed cost. And that would leave 1/3 or a 33% margin for you. So if you believe that the sales price is going to be 10 bucks, you should be looking to land a product at Amazon for about $3 or a little more than $3. Since Amazon fees can be variable and aren't always about 1/3, I would recommend you guys use the net calculator inside of the product database or the Jungle Scout extension, which you can find by clicking on the net value inside of the Jungle Scout extension and entering your product cost right here. Alternatively, you can find it inside of Jungle Scout by clicking on the net price, which brings up a similar modal. The benefit of using the FBA profit calculator inside of Jungle Scout is it is taking into account the product weight and dimensions in order to figure out the Amazon fees, so it gives you an accurate estimate of what Amazon is going to charge you for their fees. Now that you have a better understanding about how the Jungle Scout tool works, how to gauge demand and competition, as well as the profitability or the margins for your product, let's go ahead into the next video where we'll dive into our first round of product ideas. In this lesson, let's put all this information we just learned about demand and competition and profitability into practice and actually find some product ideas. By the end of this lesson, I want you guys to understand how you find those first 10 or 15 product ideas. And then after this, I encourage you to actually go do that. So let's go ahead and make some product database searches. Again, you can sell in any category you like, but I'll go ahead and choose a few that I'm more familiar with for this particular example. So I'm going to ask Jungle Scout to show me all the products that are in these categories between $15 and let's say $40, sell at least 300 units per month, and let's say have under 10 reviews. After searching, I'll see all the products on Amazon that meet that particular criteria. Now, keep in mind that these are just individual products. They could potentially be outliers, and just because they're showing up in the results doesn't necessarily mean they are a good opportunity on Amazon. What it does mean is they're at least worth looking into as a potential product or niche that we'd want to go into. Before the product database was invented, it was very difficult to just sit at your computer and come up with all these different product ideas because, as you'll see, you start to see some relatively obscure stuff which oftentimes make great product ideas. For example, just sitting here at my desk, I would never think to sell a serving set that is shaped like a whatever this even is. In addition to that, I'm seeing some other kind of obscure items like this floating shelf or a favor bag for a wedding or a Prince Charming cardboard stand-up. These could all be potential good ideas to sell on Amazon. And as I said earlier, it's tough to think of this stuff while just sitting at your desk. So let's take one of these and let's go ahead and search for it on Amazon and see what the depth of market looks like by using the Jungle Scout extension. For this example, let's go ahead and just randomly pick one of these items. How about this one, a tap handle? So again, this particular listing does quite well. 527 sales the past month, sells for 22 bucks, and only has one review at the time that we found this on Amazon. But let's see if this is a good opportunity as a whole, or if this is just an outlier on Amazon. So I went ahead and searched for T-tap handle. It looks like this is applicable for my particular product idea because these all kind of look the same. And now let's go ahead and run the extension. The goal of running the extension is to get a good idea of the